Welcome back to another reading and correcting of Stepping Up by me, Kindar, of the Tiger Prince and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. Today we are doing chapter 79. The stairs leading up to the door had changed. Tibs had noticed they were no longer Tibs had noticed they were no longer simply flat stone on the ground as he walked. Weren't. Flat stone on the ground as he walked by Chicano's toe. Tibs had noticed they weren't flat stones on the ground anymore. On the ground, as he walked to check in on Stowe previously. And more like steps in a normal building. More like steps. More like steps with gold edge and black spot. He'd stayed far enough, he hadn't realized the spots were designed to be rats and bunnies, made to seem like they were running up the stairs. The two guards by the door ignored them. Like all of Harry's guards in the town, they wore simple leathers with a badge emblazoned on the breast. The white shield with the crossed sword wasn't painted on anymore, but silver, delicately engraved with black filigree. Tibs couldn't identify. There was essence woven through it, but he couldn't tell which or what the effect might be. The cleric was who stood in front of the door, an older man with a hard expression. He looked them over, placed a hand on Mez's shoulder without asking, then stepped away. Tibs went over how the essence had moved and shaped itself within the archer. He'd decided purity was the next element he'd work on. Now that Water's influence was mostly unnoticeable. He wanted to properly heal his friends and felt the hard work mindset of the element would be the least destructive. Was it my imagination? Commodore said. Once out of earshot from the entrance, or were the guards wary of us? I don't think they know what to make of us, what to make of the job they have to do, Karina answered. You've seen them in town, edging away anytime they realize there's a runner nearby. I don't think any training they got in whatever kingdom they came from covers how to keep adventurers in the making under control. You'd think the guild would take care of that, Miss said. You'd think, Jekyll replied, but we had the adventurers reject first, then drafted thugs, and now men and women utterly out of their depth. It's almost like they have no idea how to handle a new dungeon or the runners they send in it. Why don't they just get guards from other dungeons to come help train these? Tibs asked. They'd know how to do it, studied the walls, looking for a noticeable difference, but they were much like the last time. Maybe not, Karina said. It's been a long time since there was a new dungeon. I think nearly a century. The city that grew up around the last one would have proper militia now, and the runners all pay to go through it. And I doubt that they had as many recruits pulled from cells as we did. This dungeon had a tumultuous start. I won't be surprised if books are written about it. Is that good? Stowe asked, and Tibs relayed the question. Karina shrugged. It'll probably affect the next dungeon, especially if there are still people left of that group who tried to kill you. But just to make sure it's better guarded, I think. Until the guild understand that you're a person, I doubt they'll be able to properly prepare for what a dungeon will do. What works for an animal won't work on someone who can reason. Danny doesn't like the idea they might learn I can think, Still said. She's right. Tibs shook his head at Karina's critical expression. What happened to clerics being part of the team once Stowe was rogue? I haven't seen one team with... Oh, wow. I haven't seen a team. Any team with them on it. I haven't seen any team with them on it. Maybe they meant Lambda? Miss asked. Who knows? Jekyll replied, walking past the hidden doorway. Jekyll, Karina called, the door's here. I want to go through the first floor again, to see what changed. The loot isn't going to be worth the trouble, Karina said. It looked up. I can't force you to use the doorway, Stowe replied, but I didn't make any change to this floor that'll mean anything to your team. This is just for Omegas. Omegas who aren't supposed to be trained or have good equipment, he added in a miffed tone. Tibs smiled. With the coins the merchant paid him for the security of the runners provided, Tibs had gotten Darren to get enough cloth armor and basic weapons for 2 teams. Tibs had spoken with one of the runners who'd survived their first run, those who had been sent in with nothing but the armor and weapons the guild provided, and offered to help them with better armor and training. Although he made sure they weren't told anything about the traps and dangers they would face within Stowe. The only thing he couldn't provide them with was the amulet for the team sorcerer. The starting ones were all in the guild's possession, and the ones the merchant sold needed a sorcerer to have an element to be used. The guild hadn't complained about what he was doing yet. Stowe doesn't mind, Tibs said. Well, this was a waste of time, Miss said as they walked down the stairs to the second floor. Sorry, Dungeon, I mean no offense. Still chuckled. I can't be offended that you guys barely had to do anything to make it through. Although watching stone spears break on Jackal was a surprise. No, are your rank teams have done the first floor? Tibs asked. Of course, but none of them have been brave enough to step on a trigger and see what happened. Sure, brave is how I'd describe what he did. Idiotic, Karina said. Are you talking behind my back? Jekyll called already at the bottom of the stairs. Where else are we going to do it? Karina replied, with you all the way down there. I'm excited to face the upgraded second floor. He just wants the loot, Mez muttered. You always sound surprised when you say that, the fighter asked. Mez startled, then answered. Because I keep thinking there has to be a point when you'll have enough. That's blasphemy. Jekyll had his arms over his chest as they reached up. Even without the guild holding our debt over our head, there is no such thing as having enough money. Now, that's a noble way of thinking, Karina said, stepping past the fighter, if I ever heard one. Jekyll sputtered at her while Tibs went to the alcove at the back of the stairs, drawn there by the new essence. Beside the earthen doorway leading back to the first floor, it had... wait a minute. Jekyll sputtered while Tibs went to the back of the stair, drawn there by the new essence. That doesn't belong there. By the new essence, besides, next to the hidden doorway leading back to the first floor. It had the same essence lock, so Tibs used water, but nothing happened. Sorry, Tibs. You have to unlock it from the other side first. Tibs studied the pattern closer. Storm warning simply meant he had to be cleverer about how he went about unlocking it here. He noticed that each of the essence tube that had to be filled also had a thin string extended deeper into the wall until it was out of Tibs' sensing range. He sent water along it, but he couldn't tell what happened once it was out of his sense, other than the door remaining closed. Do you think I can get other elements? Tibs asked as he rejoined his friends. Don't you have enough already? Mez replied. Tibs shrugged. I can't do much with essences I don't have. What do you mean, much? The archer asked. What can you do to other essences that we can't? This kept his irritation at Mrs. accusatory tone in check. At some point, you're going to be taught how to sense the other essences. It came up for me as part of learning to absorb water essence as I used it. All I know about that at this point is that being able to sense them lets you defend against other runners using their essences. I thought you could do that because of your element. Kirina said, surprised. He shook his head. My teacher showed me how to disrupt another runner's weave. My element just make it... It would be etching. My elements just make it easier for me to do it. He couldn't find a way to explain how knowing what color the essence was in the runner gave him a better idea of how to disrupt it. How about you use that element to get us across the pool? Jekyll asked. My element can't let me do that, he replied, trying not to smile. I need water for that. Well, blue eyes, Jekyll said, grinning. Get to it. Still we'll have something in place. You know that, right? Why don't you just walk across the bridge? Kirina asked Jekyll. That idiotic idea worked well enough for you in the trap room. Jekyll smiled at her. I guess that's the limit of my idiocy. Ness snorted. Tibs sent the essence ahead of him as he stepped off the ledge, and he landed on a solid disk of ice, wobbling on the water as it expanded. He stopped its expansion and controlled how deep it went. He didn't have to make it thick. His will determined how solid it was. Someone is trying to outthink me, Stowe said, amused. Something impacted the ice, making it tilt before breaking, and Tibs used essence to keep himself secured as Jekyll yelled in surprise, sinking in the water. He solidified the water under the fighter and raised him. I'm not ready, he said, reconnecting the ice. Considered leaving him dripping, but decided to be nice and pulled it off. Pulled it off. Pulled the water. Yeah, I'll let the my editors, other readers determine. It looked ready, the fighter said. This makes the ice harder, compacting the essence on top of willing it so. If you're in such a hurry, you should have used the bridge, trying to think of a way to keep Stowe from using the stone pillars in the pool against us. That was fun, Jekyll said. Tibs glared at him and considered removing the ice from under his feet. Forcing him to walk to the other side under the water would be a proper punishment for that statement. Only he didn't know if Jekyll needed to breathe when he was stoned. He went back to working on the ice platform. How is this going to be different? The fighter asked. It can turn them on as we cross. It can't make changes once we're in the room. Tiggs extended the path across the pool. That means the pillars have to be on some sort of trigger. The last time I aced all the water, and somehow it got larger. I think that's what triggered it. Now I'm making sure it's not going to press against the walls or the floor. When there was enough space for his entire team, he called up, It's safe to come down. Mayers was the first one, freezing in place, then carefully walking around, looking perplexed. Why isn't it slick? It's my essence, Tibs replied, taking hold of the water around the platform to keep it from wobbling, to keep the wobbling from tipping too far as Kirina dropped to it. When Commodore landed, it hardly reacted. He smiled as their safe path to the other side of the room solidified and hardened. He started forward. He had outsmarted Stowe. That feeling lasted until they were in the middle of the pool, and Tibs felt something moved under the water. Oh, come on! How had he forgotten about that thing? This is a trap room! His friends were already running, and he ran after them. He shaped the water on the other end into stairs until the creature was approaching quickly. It was going to. The ice exploded under him, and Tibs pulled a chunk under. Okay, that's not capitalized. The ice exploded, and Tibs pulled a chunk under him and his team. As they moved in the air, reinforcing it as reinforcing it as wind buffeted him. Tibs! Karina called with urgency. He cursed. They were sliding toward the edge, and even her wind wasn't enough to stop them. He pulled more ice and made a wall to arrest them. What was that? Jekyll demanded. Hold on! Tibs called as the platform started falling. He steadied Karina. It steadied. It steadied as Karina added wind under it, but it wasn't enough. It impacted the water, and Tibs took hold of it to keep the platform steady. Heat bloomed behind him, and a glance showed him Mez firing arrows after arrows of the water. I don't know what it is, he muttered, but dead is what it's going to be. That's not helping. Tibs added essence to the rear of the platform to compensate for the heat. I don't see you do anything, the archer snapped. He's keeping us from falling in the water, Karina snapped in return. Yelling isn't going to help anything, Jekyll said. Tibs put them out of his mind, incensed for the creature in the water. Should you not hurry us to the other side? Goldar asked in a flat tone. It's not attacking, so it's planning something. It was swinging back and forth ahead of them. Did it not know where they were? Was it clever enough to anticipate Tibs' action? Was still controlling it directly? That seemed to be the one exception to him not being able to change a room. He could control his creatures. Or was it just the brutes, or the boss creature? Tibs much preferred things when he thought. Traps room meant only traps, and creature rooms only that. We can't stay here, Karina said, standing behind him. I know, but I don't think it can tell where we are if we aren't moving. I don't know if I'll be able to keep us together if it shatters the ice again. Get that water jumper out of the water. I'll deal with it, Mez said angrily. Tibs started, his anger rising to the top, then realized something might be able to make that happen. How crafty was Stowe? How crafty had he made the creature? He formed a platform of ice ahead of them, hardened it, then made human-like shapes on them, 5 of them. It wasn't reacting. Did it know they weren't real? Did it not sense them? They had been walking before it attacked, but they'd been walking for a while by then. So, a range in his sense, or had still wanted to be certain they'd be too far from either side. The second, he decided. Stowe was clever that way. He wobbled the fake them, then, when that didn't make the creature react, he tried to figure a way to imitate them walking. He had no idea how Stowe had got stone creature to move. Instead, he changed their shapes and broke pieces so they fell on the platform at the rate of steps. As soon as the first piece of ice hit the platform, the creature swung for it. It's coming! Tibs yelled. I'm right here, Mez muttered. The creature broke the platform, sending ice and water everywhere. Tibs watched in awe as it sailed through the air. It was transparent blue, shaped like an elongated barrel with fins around it and a snout in the front and a flat tail at the back. Then it exploded in a ball of fire and shards that rained around them. Tibs pushed the platform to the edge as fast as he could. He couldn't sense another one in the water, but he didn't care to risk it. They were up the ice stairs he made and on the stone platform. Tibs leaned against the wall, panting. What was that? He demanded. Stowe? Well, the dungeon hesitated. I was going to call it a swimmer, but I kind of prefer Mez's name for it, so it's a water jumper now. Tibs laughed. He laughed hard enough, he slipped to the ground. When he finally got it under control, he saw the worried look on Mez's face, and he was laughing again. And that concludes Chapter 79 of Stepping Up. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next one's going to be, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read the story, it is available on Royal Road. And if you want to read ahead of Royal Road, you can do that on my Patreon, as well as supporting me. And if you want to listen to me do these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. Links are in the notes. And with that, I shall wish you a good day.